Picture this. You are no longer in your own time, no longer in a world of doors that close, walls that separate, or the easy privacy of modern life. Instead, you stand in the choking smoke of a Viking longhouse around the year 900 AD. The air is heavy, stinging your eyes with a mixture of wood smoke, sweat, ale, and the unwashed odor of dozens of bodies pressed together. The great wooden beams above your head creak and drip with tar. Shadows leap and twist across the walls as firelight spits and crackles from the central hearth. It is your wedding night, but nothing about it resembles the quiet tenderness of the modern imagination. Here, marriage is not an act of romance. It is a performance, and the stage is packed. Your clan is here, your new family is here, and it feels as though the entire village has crammed into this single long room to witness not just your union, but its proof. The sound is deafening. Laughter, boasting, drinking horns clashing. Yet beneath the cheer lurks a different energy, an expectant silence that gathers like a storm. At the far end of the hall, a thin curtain is hung, a flimsy scrap of cloth, hiding a small alcove where a wooden bed lies piled with straw and furs. That is your wedding chamber. That is your sanctuary. But it is only a stage prop. Everyone knows what it conceals, and everyone knows it is temporary. The curtain is no barrier. It is the thinnest veil between you and 50 watching eyes. This night is not about intimacy. It is not about love. It is about survival. To these people, to the kin who raised you and the clan you are entering, marriage is a contract, and every contract requires a seal, proof that what has been agreed upon has truly been delivered. For you, that seal will come not in ink on parchment, but in flesh and blood. You and your new husband are not merely bride and groom. You are performers in a ritual older than memory, one that will determine your worth in this household. The fire spits again, and for a moment, the shadows on the wall look monstrous. Bearded faces, drunk and red, leer at you. Women, children, and warriors alike, all waiting. Some smile, others whisper. A few make crude jokes, and through it all, a steady undercurrent of judgment runs. How you behave tonight, how you endure the ordeal, may echo for the rest of your life. Imagine the weight of that knowledge pressing on you. Every step you take is watched. Every glance, every hesitation, every movement is noted. This is not only your wedding night, it is your initiation. A single failure could brand you for years as weak, unfit, or worse, barren. If you are tempted to see this as exaggeration, know that the sagas themselves remind us of such moments. In the Icelandic sagas, marriages are rarely private affairs. They are spectacles of alliances, of power, of property being bound together. The feasting, the gift-giving, the boasting. These were not side events. They were the marriage. And the consummation, public and verified, was its final act. But let us pause. Why such cruelty? Why strip away privacy at the very moment when it should matter most? To answer, you must understand the world that shaped these people. Viking society lived balanced on a knife's edge. Famine was a single bad harvest away. Enemies lurked across the sea and in the neighboring valley. Death was constant and close. In such a world, love was not the glue that held people together. Survival was. And survival required alliances, wealth, heirs, and proof. The private heart of a person was irrelevant when weighed against the life of the clan. This is why your wedding night is not your own. It belongs to the hall, to the family, to the society that demands proof of your role. The laughter around you is tinged with menace. The drunken roars mask a cold calculus. You are here because families bargained for you. Your body is now collateral. Your future children, the guarantee of a pact between men who traded silver, cattle, and oaths to secure this moment. As the night grows late and the ale flows stronger, the anticipation sharpens. Soon, chosen witnesses kin from both families will escort you to the curtained alcove. Their eyes will not leave you until the deed is done. Their ears will strain for confirmation. Behind that curtain, you will be expected to endure what is, for them, not an act of passion, but of verification. Think of the psychology. Every modern notion of privacy, of tenderness, of vulnerability is stripped away. You are not a bride in the way you might have imagined. You are proof, flesh and blood evidence, the living seal of a contract forged in smoke and ale. Before the curtain is pulled back, before you are pushed into that alcove, breathe this air one last time. This is not merely the smell of smoke and sweat. It is the smell of expectation, of power, of survival. And tonight, survival depends on what happens in that bed. The curtain may promise privacy, but before it is ever drawn back, your role in this society has already been decided. To the Vikings, marriage was never about two people discovering one another in affection or love. It was about two families calculating their strength, their survival, and their reach. You likely barely knew the man you now call husband. Perhaps you glimpsed him once at a market. Perhaps you never saw him until the day your kin arranged this pact. Falling in love was not part of the bargain. What mattered was land, cattle, ships, and alliances. Those were the currencies of marriage. You were the collateral. If your father still lived, he was the negotiator. If not, your brother or another male guardian acted in his place. These men were not looking for kindness in your husband's eyes. They were weighing his wealth, his reputation, the strength of his clan. To them, you were not a daughter or sister in this moment. You were leverage, a living bond to secure their own family's place in an unforgiving world. And then, there is the mal, the bride price. Your husband's family paid it, not you. Unlike a dowry in other societies, this was not wealth you carried into the marriage. It was a payment made directly to your family, compensation for their loss of you and the womb you carried. In the starkest terms, you were an asset being transferred, your value calculated in silver, cattle, or in the strength of your family name. This may sound harsh, but it was brutally pragmatic. The Norse lived on the edge of survival. A bad harvest could mean famine. A raid could leave a family destitute. To tie your kin to another clan through marriage was a strategy, a hedge against disaster. For all the poetry of sagas, life in this age was about endurance, not romance. On the day of the wedding itself, these calculations became public spectacle. The ceremony was not a quiet exchange of vows whispered between two people. It was a loud, chaotic, communal event. The longhouse shook with drinking, feasting, and boasting. Oaths were shouted across the firelight. Alliances were declared and sealed in the presence of the entire community. The key moment came with the exchange of gifts. Your new husband presented the bride price to your father, a display of wealth that elevated his own honor while compensating your kin. Then, in front of all, he placed in your hand the keys to his household. To modernize, this might seem like empowerment. To hold the keys appears a mark of authority, but the reality was far colder. The keys were not freedom. They were responsibility. From this moment on, the management of his household was yours to bear. You would oversee food stores, servants, spinning and weaving, brewing and cooking. You would command the thralls, but answer for their failures. The weight was immense, but it was not liberation. It was duty, another chain in the long set that bound you to this life. In return, your family offered him a sword, a gleaming symbol of protection, yes, but also of burden. He was now bound to defend not only you, but the honor of the family name you carried into his hall, If anyone shamed you, insulted you, or threatened you, he was expected to answer with steel. And if he failed, it was his honor that crumbled. Every part of this ceremony was layered with meaning, with property and power, being shuffled from one set of hands to another. The exchange was not about love. It was a contract performed in plain sight, with every man, woman, and child present to witness the transfer. The feast, the boasting, the laughter, all of it was the noise that covered the reality, that you had just become property in a different household. It is worth noting that this practice was not unique to the Norse. Across medieval Europe, marriages were almost always transactional. But the Vikings embraced this reality with a bluntness that shocks us today. Where others might hide behind veils of ceremony or blessing, the Norse dragged the truth into the open hall. A marriage was a deal, and you were the guarantee. And so you sat there, as the fire spat sparks into the smoky air, as the men raised their horns and sang of battles, as the women whispered and watched you from across the benches. You held the keys in your hand, heavy with their new weight. You knew the sword your husband had accepted could just as easily be raised to defend you or to defend his own pride at your expense. Your role was no longer yours to choose. It had been chosen for you. The gift exchange was finished, the contract sealed, and now the eyes of the hall turned again to that flimsy curtain at the end of the room. For the contract was not yet complete, not until flesh proved oath, not until the bed-warming ritual. The longhouse grows louder as the ale flows freely, yet under the drunken laughter runs a different tension, sharp, expectant, almost predatory. Everyone knows the true climax of the night has not yet come. The feasting, the gift exchange, the boasts, these are preludes. The real seal on this alliance waits behind that thin, trembling curtain. At last, a select group rises, witnesses. They are not strangers, not outsiders, but bloodkin, your husband's brothers, cousins, perhaps even your own uncle or elder. Their task is solemn and merciless, to escort you and your new husband to the alcove and to verify what happens there. Imagine walking that short distance through the hall. Every eye follows you. Drunken jeers followed to advice, shouted with crude laughter. Ribald songs turning your body into the subject of the night's entertainment. Your steps are heavy, your heart louder than the pounding drums. The curtain is drawn aside, and you are pushed into the narrow alcove, the air inside thicker, darker, more suffocating than the hall itself. The bed is crude straw stuffed into a sagging sack, covered with greasy furs that smell of animal and damp. This is no chamber of romance. It is a stage, and the audience is just outside. Their shadows flicker across the thin fabric as they crowd close. Their ears strain, listening for confirmation. The consummation is not private. It is not tender. It is verification. The sagas record such moments with chilling bluntness. The marriage is not valid until it is physically proven. A body must demonstrate what words and silver alone cannot. And so, with the entire community waiting, you are forced into a ritual that strips away every illusion of intimacy. There is no room here for hesitation, no allowance for shyness or fear. To falter is to shame not only yourself, but both families. A failed consummation could mean the alliance unravels before it begins. The contract depends on your body. The witnesses do not leave. They linger in the shadows, ensuring the ritual is completed. Sometimes, the sagas suggest, they might even lift the curtain to check. Others press their ears to the cloth, waiting to hear the unmistakable sounds that would confirm the pact had been sealed. Their role was not to celebrate, but to judge, to verify that you had fulfilled your role as the living seal of the contract. Think of the weight of this knowledge. Think of the terror of realizing that your most private act is now a matter of public record, that your worth is being measured in the silence or sound that emerges from behind the curtain. You are no longer a daughter, no longer even a bride. You are evidence. And yet, this cruelty was not unique to the Norse. In medieval France, England, even Rome, consummation was regarded as a legal requirement of marriage. Some noble households demanded proof-bloodied sheets, witnesses, or oaths sworn before kin. But where other cultures often cloaked this reality in euphemism or behind closed doors, the Norse dragged it into the open. The longhouse, after all, had no walls, no privacy. Everything in life was shared, witnessed, known. Why should the marriage bed be different? Outside, the fire burns low, but the mood is restless. They wait for the signal, for the final word that the alliance is sealed. For you, behind the curtain, the ordeal is suffocating. There is no escape. There is only performance, under the crushing weight of expectation, under the eyes of kin who will tomorrow smile at you as family. But tonight, listen for proof of your submission. When it is done, when enough time has passed, when the witnesses are satisfied, the pressure lifts only slightly. The curtain remains thin. The knowledge that everything you do from now on will be observed and judged remains heavier than the smoke-filled air. The marriage is now complete in their eyes. The contract sealed not just by silver, oaths, and gifts, but by your body itself. You have endured the ritual, but the ordeal has only begun. For the morning will bring its own ritual, one colder, more calculated, and in some ways more devastating than the night. The night is endless. Drunken voices fade only when exhaustion drags the hall into uneasy slumber. The curtain still sways with every draught, carrying with it the knowledge that nothing you did was unseen, nothing unheard. And then, at last, the first grey light of dawn presses through the smoke hole above. It is merciless, exposing. You are not relieved. You are emptied. The witnesses, finally satisfied that the contract was sealed, have collapsed onto their benches. Their snores now join the chorus of coughing, muttering, the faint cries of infants. For the first time since the feast began, you are left alone with the man who is now your husband. Yet the feeling is not one of intimacy, it is of finality, as though something irreversible has been carved into the marrow of your life. He turns to you, and instead of a touch of comfort, he presses something cold and solid into your hand. This is the Morgengifu, the morning gift. To an outsider, it might look like affection, a keepsake from the first night of marriage. To you, it is not a symbol of love, but a final entry in the ledger. The Morgengifu could take many forms: a silver brooch glinting in the smoke, a set of finely wrought keys, a small piece of land if your husband was wealthy. Whatever it was yours alone, your one legal property, untouchable even by him. In law codes, like the Gragas of Iceland, this gift is recognized as belonging solely to the wife, a rare sliver of security in a life otherwise bound to another's will. But make no mistake, this was not kindness. This was not generosity. The gift was a public acknowledgement that the contract had been fulfilled, that you were a virgin as expected, that the alliance was now cemented by your body's compliance. It was a receipt, and yet paradoxically, it was also your only shield. Should he cast you out tomorrow, whether for barrenness, quarrels, or simple whim, this gift could not be taken back. In a society where a woman's survival depended on the goodwill of men, the Morgengifu was insurance, the faintest thread of independence. Still, the irony burned. You had just endured the most public, humiliating night of your life, and the reward was not tenderness, but transaction. A token, placed in your palm like wages after labor. To call it a gift is almost cruel. It was more severance pay than celebration. Consider the psychology of that moment. You lie in a straw-filled bed, the smell of damp wool thick in your nose, your body aching from exhaustion and fear. And into your hand falls the one object that confirms your value has been accepted. You are not cherished. You are approved. You are not loved. You are accounted for. Archaeologists have unearthed such tokens in women's graves. Silver rings, ornate keys, even small farmsteads marked in records as a woman's possession. They are reminders that beneath the poetry of sagas and the thunder of raids, life was built on contracts, on exchanges, on proof. You clutch the gift because you must. It is the only thing in this hall that belongs to you alone. It is your safeguard, your survival, your silent reminder that you are not entirely powerless. But the truth gnaws at you. This object is not love. It is the price of your body, paid in full. And as you rise to face the day, you understand something with chilling clarity. The curtain may be drawn back now, the night may be over, but the performance has only shifted to a new stage. Your marriage is sealed, but your life in this hall has only begun, and it will be governed by laws and expectations even more unforgiving than the ritual you have just survived. Mourning does not bring relief. It brings noise. The longhouse, once roaring with wedding feasts, now stirs with the ordinary chaos of survival. Thralls rise first, shuffling barefoot through the ash to stoke the dying embers of the hearth. Their coughs mingle with the low cries of infants, the groans of hungover warriors, the wet rasp of old lungs rattling in the smoke. This is not just your home. It is your cage, your workplace, and your stage. Look around. The longhouse is a single cavernous room, 50 feet, maybe more, of timber walls sealed with tar, thick enough to withstand the brutal Scandinavian winter, but never enough to keep out the damp. Smoke lingers like a second ceiling, staining the beams black and stinging your eyes. Every corner is alive with bodies. Children sleep tangled with parents, cousins pressed together under heavy furs. The lowest-ranking thralls and even livestock crowd near the drafty doors, shifting and grunting as the morning begins. Your bed, the so-called bridal chamber, is no chamber at all, merely a curtained alcove at the far end of the hall. The mattress, a coarse sack stuffed with hay, is alive with fleas. The furs are heavy, greasy, and reeking of both beast and man. This is where you are expected to consummate your marriage. It is also where you will give birth, recover from sickness, endure pain, and raise heirs. It is not a sanctuary, but a public box, a nest of survival shared with vermin. Privacy does not exist here. Every word you speak is overheard, every argument witnessed. Intimacy with your husband is a furtive act, muffled under furs with the constant fear of being overheard by your mother-in-law snoring a few feet away, or by a child pretending to sleep. Even your silences are noticed, too long, too heavy, and whispers may spread about what is wrong in your marriage bed. This communal life was not unique to the Norse. Across medieval Europe, peasants lived in similar one-room dwellings, where families, servants, and animals shared the same smoky air. But the longhouse amplified the closeness to an unbearable degree. Here, a household might include dozens warriors, thralls, kin, children, visitors, livestock, all bound under a single roof. The longhouse was not simply a home. It was a microcosm of society itself. Hierarchy, duty, surveillance, and survival compressed into timber walls. And the sensory assault never ends. The smell is overwhelming. Smoke that never clears, damp wool, sour ale, unwashed bodies, manure tracked in from the yard. Your nose never knows relief. Your ears, too, are under siege. The ceaseless cough of old lungs, the cries of infants, the rasp of a saw as a thrall repairs a broken beam, the muttering of men as they sharpen blades. Even silence is crowded here. Your role in this environment is clear. The keys your husband placed in your hand last night were not symbolic ornaments. They were the sign that you are now manager of this entire hive. You must oversee food stores, ensure the mead does not sour, direct the thralls, weave the cloth, and prepare the endless stream of meals that keep the household alive. If anything falters, if a pot spoils, if the food runs low, the blame will fall on you. And yet, within this crowded chaos, hierarchy is rigid. The benches lining the walls are beds, but they are also markers of rank. The honoured sit near the central hearth, where warmth and light are strongest. The weak, the poor, and the enslaved are pushed toward the cold drafts at the edges. Even in sleep, status is visible. And you, the new wife, are expected to guard your place fiercely, for one mistake could see you lose not only respect, but survival itself. Intimacy, tenderness, even peace. These are luxuries unknown to the longhouse. What you have instead is endurance. To live here, you must harden your senses. Learn to tune out the fleas biting your skin, the stench of spoiled food, the cries of another woman's child in the dark. You must live in constant performance, always aware that dozens of eyes watch, always remembering that every action is weighed. The romantic image of the Viking longhouse, the roaring fire, the strong chieftain, the proud shield maiden, is a lie of sagas told centuries later. The truth is far more claustrophobic, far more brutal. This is not a hall of heroes. It is a crowded, smoky, vermin-filled arena where survival is communal, and individuality is a fantasy you must bury to endure. And already, from your first morning, the true expectation of your new role is whispered in every glance, every muttered word. You were not brought here to find happiness. You were brought here to produce heirs, and the pressure to do so will shadow every breath you take from this moment on. The longhouse may be filled with noise, but beneath it all, there is one expectation that beats louder than the crackling hearth. You must bear children, not just children's sons, heirs. The reason for the bride price, the reason for the public ordeal, the reason you now hold the household keys. Your womb is not simply yours. It is the property of your husband's clan, and it is expected to deliver proof of prosperity. In Viking society, fertility was everything. A wife who bore strong sons elevated her husband's honor and secured her own fragile position. A barren wife, by contrast, was a catastrophe. Not only did her husband lose the investment of bride price, but the alliance forged through her body was rendered fruitless. The sagas and law codes make it clear. After 2 or 3 years without children, a man could legally divorce his wife on grounds of barrenness. Divorce was not discreet. It was public humiliation. Witnesses would be summoned. 3 to stand at the marital bed. 3 at the longhouse door. In their presence, your husband would declare you barren. He would name you as a failed product, a broken vessel. Then you would be cast out, sent back to your family in shame. The bride price would be dishonored, your reputation destroyed, your chance of remarriage slim to none. The weight of this possibility is unbearable. Each passing month without pregnancy becomes another turn of a silent clock, ticking toward ruin. Every delay feeds whispered speculation. Is it you? Is it the gods withholding favor? Is it a flaw in your bloodline? The pressure is constant, unrelenting, and the blame always falls on you. The psychological burden was immense. Imagine waking every day, knowing your worth was measured not in your thoughts, not in your labor, but in the swelling of your belly. Each meal, each ritual, each intimate moment was heavy with scrutiny. Even if the fault lay with your husband's seed, society did not see it so. The sagas rarely tell of barren men. It is always the wife who carries the shame. This obsession with fertility was not unique to the Norse. In Rome, in medieval England, in countless societies, women were measured by their ability to produce heirs. But the Norse added their own brutal edge. Here, in a world where survival teetered on the edge of famine and feud, children were not blessings, they were necessities. Without them, a family's line ended. Without them, a clan lost its claim to land, its honor, its future. And it was not just any children that mattered. Sons were the shield and the sword of the family's survival. Daughters could forge alliances through marriage, yes, but sons held land, wielded weapons, defended honor. To give birth to a son was to secure your place in the hall for a time. To give birth to daughters alone was to live with a whisper of doubt in every corner, a subtle erosion of your security. From the moment you stepped into this hall, your body became a battlefield. It was not yours to rest, to heal, or to choose. It was pressed into service for the clan. The intimacy you shared with your husband was no private joy, but a duty and act performed under the gaze of kin who expected results. And if results did not come, the punishment was swift and merciless. Think of the anxiety that would haunt each night. Think of the way you might lie awake, clutching the morning gift in your palm, wondering if it would soon be your only lifeline. The longhouse was filled with noise, but in your heart there was only silence, waiting, fearing, counting days. The contract of marriage was never about your happiness. It was about heirs. And until you produced one, preferably a son, your place in this hall remained fragile, always at risk of being stripped away with a single declaration. When, at last, your belly begins to swell, you might feel a fleeting relief. The whispers quiet, the eyes upon you soften. Your body has proven itself. But any thought of rest or reverence vanishes quickly. Pregnancy, in this world, is not a time of protection. It is another duty, another weight. The keys your husband placed in your hand on your wedding day still jangle at your side. They are reminders that even now, carrying new life, you remain the steward of this hall. Food must be rationed carefully to survive the winter. Ale must be brewed, cloth woven, animals tended. The thralls take orders from you, but their labor is not freedom from your own. You are expected to work alongside them, to spin and grind and carry until your body can bear no more. There is no concept of maternity leave. To fall ill, to complain, to falter, it is weakness. And weakness is dangerous in a world that tolerates none. Even the gods you pray to, Freya, goddess of fertility, Frigg, protector of women, Air, associated with healing offer comfort through ritual, not reprieve. And then comes the ordeal of childbirth itself, not in a hospital, not in a sterile chamber, but in the same flea-ridden bed where you first endured consummation. Sometimes, a special birthing hut might be prepared, a crude structure, little more than timber and straw. But most often, you remain within the longhouse, surrounded not by trained healers, but by women of the household, your mother-in-law, your husband's sisters, his cousins. They bring with them not medicine, but tradition. They chant prayers, burn herbs, press poultices of plants, and even animal dung onto your skin. They whisper charms, make offerings to the gods, bind your belly with cloth to encourage strength. Their hands are rough, unwashed, their knowledge inherited not from science, but from repetition and desperate hope. Every birth is a battlefield. The mortality rate is staggering both for mother and child, and, In some Icelandic sagas, the birthbed is described with the same reverence and the same dread as the battlefield itself. For women, this was the war you could not avoid. To live long enough to see grey hair, you had to survive it again and again. Consider the fear. No understanding of infection, no tools to stop bleeding, no knowledge of the unseen microbes that kill silently. A labour that lasts too long, a baby that comes breech, a fever after birth, all can end you. You might enter the birthing bed never to rise again, and you know it. Every woman here knows it. They've seen cousins, sisters, neighbours die screaming in the night, their blood soaking into the straw. Yet the ritual continues, because even as you writhe in agony, even as you fight for breath, what matters most to those around you is not your survival, but the child's. Will it be a son? Will the line continue? That question drowns out your cries. And if you survive, if the child lives, you will have no rest. The next day, your work resumes. The baby will feed at your breast even as you churn butter, weave cloth, or command thralls. There is no lying in, no convalescence. Life continues at its relentless pace, and you are expected to keep pace with it. It is easy to romanticize Viking mothers as fierce shield maidens, nurturing children in smoky halls. But the truth is starker, heavier. Motherhood was survival. Each pregnancy was a gamble with death. Each child a victory, tempered by fear. You did not carry children for joy. You carried them because without them, you were nothing. And all the while, you knew the ordeal was not finished. For once the child was born, its fate was not yet secure. It would still need to survive its first, most brutal judgment, the father's inspection. The moment of birth is agony, but it is not the final trial. You have endured the pain, the blood, the hands of chanting women pressing rough cloths to your body. You have cried out to Freya or Frigg, to the Norns who weave fate, begging them not to cut your thread too soon. And at last, a child lies before you, slick, wailing, alive. Relief floods through you, but it is fragile. For in Viking society, a child's survival is not guaranteed by its first breath. It must first be judged. The custom is called utburða exposure, a practice older than memory, shared by Romans, Greeks, and other ancient peoples, but in the Norse world sharpened by the blade of survival. Food is scarce. Winters are merciless. Every mouth must justify its place at the fire. A child born weak, deformed, or unwanted is seen not as innocent, but as a liability, a threat to the clan's survival. And so the infant is placed on the ground, often at the foot of the father. The hall falls silent. Your body is trembling with exhaustion, your womb raw and bleeding, your soul clinging to the tiny life you have just brought forth. But the decision is not yours. It belongs to him. Your husband steps forward. He lifts the child, studies it in the firelight. His eyes do not linger on its face in tenderness. They search for flaws. Is the child whole? Are its limbs straight? Is its cry strong? Or is there weakness? Something that marks it as a burden rather than a future warrior or mother? The sagas and law codes alike make this clear. The father's acceptance is the child's only safeguard. If he deems the infant worthy, he lifts it fully, acknowledging it as his own. Relief surges through you as women around you nod and begin preparing for the naming feast to come. The child is alive, not just in body, but in the eyes of society. It has a place. But if he does not lift it, if he turns his back, then the fate is sealed. The infant is carried out into the wilderness, left on a rock, a hillside, or at the edge of the forest, left for frost, for hunger, for wolves. The word is exposed, but in truth it means condemned. Imagine the horror of that silence. the moment your husband's eyes pass judgment, and you, the mother, have no say. Your love, your instinct to cradle and protect, is irrelevant. What matters is survival, and survival is calculated without sentiment. The baby you fought to bring into the world, that you screamed and bled for, can be discarded with a single decision. Roman law had similar customs. Patrician fathers inspected newborns, rejecting the deformed or weak. Sparta, too, is famed for casting aside infants unfit for the rigors of war. The Norse shared this brutal logic. To us, it is unthinkable. To them, it was necessity. The emotional devastation is unimaginable. You lie there in your straw-stuffed bed, too weak to rise, forced to hear the sound of tiny cries carried away into the cold. You can do nothing. To protest would be to challenge your husband's authority, to dishonor him before the clan. And dishonor in this society is a death sentence, not just for you, but for your kin. So you lie still. You build walls inside yourself. You bury your grief deep where no one can see. You learn to look away when others whisper about children carried to the woods. You harden, because to soften is to break. But if he lifts the child, if fate is kind, then for a moment your place in the hall is secure. You have given him an heir. You have fulfilled the role demanded of you. Relief spreads like warmth in your chest. You have survived this trial. Yet the security is as fragile as smoke in the rafters. A living son today does not guarantee your safety tomorrow. The laws of this hall are merciless, and the expectations of a Viking wife stretch far beyond the birthbed. For now, you breathe easier. The infant has been lifted, claimed, accepted. The women of the hall prepare for the naming ceremony, where kin will gather to hear the child's name spoken aloud, binding it officially into the family. For a moment, you feel relief wash over you. Your position in the longhouse is secure, at least for now. You have given life, and life has given you protection. But the security is thin, fragile as a frost flower on winter glass. In this world, a woman's worth rests precariously on her ability to provide heirs, and even success comes with new dangers. You are valued, but you are also watched. By your husband, by his family, by every eye in the hall that measures whether you are fulfilling the duties expected of you. The law codes tell us something striking. Unlike in many other medieval societies, Viking women could, in theory, initiate divorce. If your husband struck you publicly, if he humiliated himself by revealing weakness, or if he brought shame upon the household, say, by dressing effeminately, you could call witnesses and declare the marriage over. On parchment, it sounds progressive, almost modern. The sagas record such cases with a blunt practicality. A wife declaring her husband's unmanliness, walking away with her mourning gift, sometimes even reclaiming the original bride price. But theory is not practice. In practice, standing up in the hall, accusing your husband before his brothers, cousins, and father was an act of incredible danger. You would not only be challenging him, you would be attacking the honor of his entire clan. Could your family protect you from the blood feud that might follow? Could you endure the wrath of warriors whose pride you had shamed? So yes, the law gave you the right. But rights written in words are powerless when the hall is ruled by axes. The sagas tell of women bold enough to speak, but they also tell of the bloody consequences that followed. For most, the risk was too great. Silence was survival. Your husband's power to divorce you, by contrast, was far simpler. Barren, cast out. Lazy, cast out. Argumentative, cast out. Adulterous, cast out, with dishonor that would cling to your name until death. And when he declared divorce, the process was swift. Witnesses were summoned, words spoken, and you were gone stripped from the hall like a cloak tossed aside. He kept the land, the wealth, the children. You left with only your morning gift and your shame. This imbalance shaped every moment of your life. Every word you spoke at the fire was weighed. Every expression was judged. Too quiet, and you risked being called weak. Too bold, and you risked being branded quarrelsome. It was a tightrope walk across an abyss. One wrong step, and you were lost. And if you thought bearing a son would shield you forever, think again. Death was constant in this world sickness. Raids, accidents, famine. If your son died, your security with him might die as well. The hall would whisper again. Would she bear another? Would the gods favor her womb again? Or had her worth run dry? The sagas are filled with stories of women maneuvering within this fragile system, using wit, influence, or sheer force of will to protect their position. But for every woman remembered in poetry, countless others vanished into obscurity, their names lost, their lives spent in silence. Motherhood, then, was never simple love. It was a weapon, a shield, a gamble with fate. To give birth was to buy time, to secure a little more safety in a world that measured you, not by who you were, but by what you could produce. And even when you succeeded, even when the child thrived, you knew deep down, your place here was never truly safe. It could be stripped away as quickly as it was granted. Security in the longhouse was always provisional, balanced on the thin edge of custom and honor. For while you, in theory, could name the terms of divorce, your husband's path to casting you aside was far easier and far more dangerous for you. He did not need elaborate cause. Barrenness was enough. So was laziness, that vague accusation encompassing anything from failing to weave quickly enough to neglecting the thrall's work. To be argumentative, to speak too sharply before others, to challenge him at the hearth, all could be used against you. The gravest sin, of course, was infidelity. For a woman, it was not merely personal betrayal, but a public stain upon the honor of two families. A husband's accusation, whether true or not, was enough to ruin you. And the procedure was merciless. Imagine it. One morning he summons witnesses, 3 to stand by the marital bed, 3 to stand at the hall's main door. Before them, he declares his reasons. He names your barrenness, your quarrels, your supposed failings, and with those words, your marriage is undone. The hall hears it, the community repeats it. By sundown, you are cast out, the judgment carried on the tongues of every neighbor. There is no quiet parting, no discreet separation. Divorce in the Viking world was spectacle, as public as the wedding feast that began it. Where the longhouse had once watched you step behind the curtain, it now watches you step out the door, stripped of home and dignity. You leave with only your morgengifu, the cold gift placed in your hand after the first night, and nothing more. The children remain with him. The land remains with him. The hall remains his. You return to your family dishonored, a burden. If they are wealthy, they may house you in reluctant pity. If not, you risk becoming a dependent, a cast-off whose worth has been judged and found wanting. Contrast this with the fragile rights afforded to you. Yes, the law codes declare you may divorce if he strikes you publicly, if he dresses effeminately, if he humiliates himself in a way that brings shame upon the hall. The sagas mention women who took this path. But to wield such a right is to gamble with your life. To accuse your husband in front of his kin is to strike at the honor of an entire clan. Do you imagine his brothers will stand idle? That his cousins, his father, his warriors will let you walk away with silver and land? No such boldness courts blood. And yet some did it. There are stories, hard, glinting like iron in the sagas of women who stood in the smoky hall and declared themselves free. Some walked away to their kin's strong protection. Others vanished into silence, their stories cut short, their courage remembered only in whispers. But for most women, the law was a cruel mirage. On the surface, a tool of power. In truth, a trap, for to use it meant risking destruction. Your husband, by contrast, need only speak the words. He suffers no shame in casting you aside for weakness, laziness, or simply for failing to bear him an heir. His honor remains intact. He loses nothing but you. This imbalance is the quiet weapon that shapes every corner of the longhouse. It dictates how you smile at the hearth, how you serve food, how you speak in public. Every day is performance. You must not falter, for faltering can mean exile. And as you move through this narrow stage, you learn the truth. Marriage in this world is not partnership. It is probation, always subject to judgment. A sword hangs above you, and it takes only a word for it to fall, even if you succeed in bearing children, even if your husband has not yet cast you aside. Another trial awaits the constant presence of other women. For in this world, fidelity is not a bond shared equally. Your infidelity would bring ruin, but his is expected, even celebrated. A powerful man is rarely content with one partner. Thralls, concubines, women taken as spoils of raids, all may share your husband's bed. They live here, under the same roof as you. They fetch water, weave cloth, serve at the hearth. And when night falls, they are summoned to him without question. Imagine it. You lie awake in your curtained alcove, listening as the man who claimed you before witnesses now claims another, mere feet away. The hall makes no effort to hide it. The longhouse has no walls, no silence. You hear everything. So do the others. There is no betrayal here, because betrayal implies love. There is only power. These women may even bear his children. Their sons could one day rival yours for inheritance. Their daughters forge alliances that weaken your own position. The sagas are filled with stories of such rivalries. Concubines elevated, wives diminished, children competing for legitimacy. The longhouse is not simply a home. It is a battleground of bloodlines. And yet, you cannot show resentment. To rage openly at your husband's concubines is to admit weakness, to risk being called quarrelsome. Your survival depends on mastering silence, on swallowing jealousy, on maintaining your dignity even as your authority is chipped away. You are the wife, the keeper of the keys, the manager of the household. That title must mean more than the gnawing humiliation in your chest. But authority is fragile. A single concubine who bears a favored son can shift the balance. A thrall who gains his affection may wield influence in whispers. And you, the lawful wife, must stand at the center of it all, pretending not to see. This was not unusual in the Viking world. Wealthy chieftains and kings often kept concubines, sometimes openly, sometimes hidden within the household. Archaeological finds tell us of women buried with jewelry and goods that suggest status higher than a thrall, but lower than a wife, likely concubines, remembered as something in between. Even sagas that celebrate shield maidens and strong women rarely pretend that wives were the only partners in a man's life. The double standard is staggering. For you, a whisper of infidelity could bring public ruin. For him, it is a mark of strength. Your silence, your endurance, your ability to keep the household running smoothly despite humiliation. These are the qualities that define your worth. Thus, the Viking bedroom is not merely a place of intimacy, it is a political arena. Every birth, every favor, Every whispered word is part of a game played with ruthless stakes. And you are forced to play, whether you will or no. Strip away the sagas, the romance of horned helmets and roaring feasts, and what remains inside the longhouse is filth. To survive here, you must become blind to smells that would make a modern person gag, numb to crawling sensations on your skin, indifferent to the constant grime that seeps into everything. The air is a thick stew of smoke and staleness. Fires burn constantly in the hearth, their smoke meant to preserve food, drive away insects, and warm the hall. But without chimneys, the smoke lingers low, coating your lungs with every breath. Your eyes sting, your throat burns. Coughing is constant, a low chorus that never ends. Bathing, contrary to some medieval stereotypes, was not entirely absent. In fact, Vikings were considered unusually clean by some contemporaries, especially compared to Christian Europeans who bathed even less. But cleanliness is relative. Water is precious, drawn from wells or rivers by hand. In winter, it means hacking through ice, hauling freezing buckets back to the hall. To bathe is labour, and labour is costly, so the household bathes together once a week, lagadaga, washing day, the word that survives as Saturday in modern Scandinavian tongues. Stones are heated in the fire, dropped into a wooden tub. The head of the household bathes first, then the family, then the thralls. By the time your turn comes, the water is tepid and murky, a soup of skin, sweat, and ash. This is as clean as you will ever be. And in between, parasites rule. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs infest every fur, every straw mattress. Archaeological digs confirm it. Flea remains are found in bedding, lice combs buried with the dead. Proof that grooming was constant battle. Wooden combs, tweezers, even ear spoons have been uncovered, showing the Norse valued grooming. But tools are not victory. They are survival kits in a war that could never be won. Think of the intimacy of this world. Two bodies, pressed together in a bed stuffed with hay, the smell of unwashed hair, greasy pelts, breath sour from rot and infection. Dental hygiene was primitive. Their diet, low in sugar, spared them many cavities, but the stone-ground flour they ate wore teeth down to the roots. Skeletons showed jaws pitted with abscesses, teeth filed down to stumps. Toothache was a way of life. Breath was agony. Kissing, if it happened, was no gentle sweetness. It was the meeting of two mouths steeped in chronic pain. Perfumes, none. Soap, in the modern sense, did not exist. They made lye-based solutions with animal fat and ash, harsh on skin, acrid in smell. Clothes reeked of sweat, smoke, and animals. Hair was greased with butter, or bear fat to keep it manageable. But the result was a constant slick odour clinging to everyone. And then there is the waste. The salerni, the latrine, sits outside in a small shack above a pit. In summer, it swarms with flies. In winter, it means stepping into the howling dark, wading through snow, to sit on frozen wood while icy air cuts your skin. There is no paper, only moss, leaves, or rags, washed and reused. The pits are rarely emptied, breeding grounds for disease. Dysentery spreads quickly in such close quarters. One contaminated meal, and the hall is struck with fever, cramps, bloody flux. Children die first, women next, men last. And you, in your role as keeper of the keys, are expected to maintain order amid this filth. To ration water, to ensure moss is gathered, to wash rags without humiliating yourself in front of the hall. Even your menstruation is a public burden. You bleed into cloth scraps or wads of moss, which must be rinsed secretly in the same rivers that provide your drinking water. If discovered, you risk whispers of impurity, superstition that your blood might spoil food, or curse the household. This is the world of Viking romance. A hall crawling with vermin, stinking of smoke and waste, echoing with coughs and the gnashing of rotten teeth. To survive, you must harden your senses, learn to ignore what surrounds you, bury your revulsion until filth becomes invisible. And still, even here, you're expected to perform to share a bed with your husband, to bear children, to smile through it all as though it were not suffocating you. The sagas speak of warriors braving storms at sea, but the true storm, for women, was inside the longhouse, where filth, disease, and humiliation press down with the weight of the smoke-stained roof beams. Every month, another reminder comes, a rhythm of blood that you cannot control, that you cannot hide. In the modern world, it is managed discreetly. Here, in the smoky suffocation of the longhouse, it is an ordeal, another trial of survival. There are no tampons, no pads, no linen carefully folded and laundered in secret. Instead, you make do with what the earth and the household can spare. Strips of worn-out cloth, old wool, moss gathered from the forest floor. These become your lifeline. You fold them, press them into your body, and pray they hold long enough. But they rarely do. They must be washed and reused, an endless cycle of concealment and humiliation. Where do you wash them? In the same river that feeds your household's drinking water, under the eyes of other women, sometimes under the eyes of thralls who may mock or whisper. And when they must be dried, you cannot hang them openly. To do so would draw attention, shame, perhaps accusations that your blood is dangerous. You must hide them, tucking them near the hearth, beneath furs, praying they dry before they sour. The sagas and surviving folklore are steeped in superstition about menstruation. A woman bleeding was sometimes believed to carry an aura of impurity, even danger. Blood could spoil food, weaken iron, or bring misfortune if handled wrongly. Some believed animals would sicken if exposed to it. So you learn silence, you learn secrecy, you pretend nothing is happening, even as your body betrays you. And yet, the hall still watches. They notice if your hands are slower, if your temper shortens, if your face pales. They whisper, they calculate your blood, your fertility, your worth. In a world where a woman's body is valued almost solely for its ability to produce heirs, menstruation is not a private rhythm. It is a ledger, a reminder that you are fertile, that your womb is not yet spent. Or worse, if it stops too soon, that perhaps you are barren. Nor is this the only indignity of the body. Consider the latrine, the salerni, a crude pit beneath a wooden bench, reeking in both summer and winter. In the middle of a storm, in the freezing dark of night, you must step outside the longhouse, fighting wind and snow, to relieve yourself. Inside, moss, scraps of wool, or leaves are your only cleansing tools. The pit beneath overflows, seeping foulness into the earth, attracting flies, breeding sickness. Dysentery, worms, parasites, all find easy homes in such filth. Your body becomes a battlefield. Parasites crawl in your hair, fleas gnaw at your skin, lice infest your clothes. Archaeological finds confirm it. Lice combs buried with women, parasite eggs preserved in ancient latrines. They did not vanish. They thrived, a constant low hum of discomfort. Imagine sharing your bed with your husband, while fleas leapt at your ankles, while lice crawled at your scalp, while your own monthly blood soaked into rags of moss. And yet, you must endure. You must not complain. To show weakness is to invite judgment, whispers that you are unfit, unclean, unlucky. You harden yourself against the indignities of your own body. You learn to work through cramps, to carry water while bleeding, to weave cloth, while blood stains your thighs. To stop is to falter, and faltering is not an option. This is not the romantic image painted by sagas of golden-haired women waiting for warriors to return. This is the hidden truth of their lives. The endless labor of the body, the humiliation of blood and waste, the constant fight to keep dignity in a world where dignity is always slipping through your fingers. And all the while, you are watched. Every stumble, every flush of your cheeks, every cloth hidden by the fire is seen, noted, judged. For in the longhouse, nothing is ever truly private. Not your marriage, not your bed, not even the secret tides of your own blood. If life in the longhouse is hard for you, bound by contract and duty, it is immeasurably worse for those at the bottom. The the thralls. They are the enslaved, the human property taken in raids or born into bondage, and their suffering forms the silent foundation upon which your household rests. They cook the meals, mend the nets, haul the water, weave the cloth. They sleep on benches near the doors, where the cold seeps in first, or even in the byres among livestock. But their greatest burden is not the endless labor. It is the total absence of ownership over their own bodies. For the thrall woman, there is no protection, no pretense of rights. At any moment, your husband or his brothers, his father, or even a guest he wishes to honor may claim her. In the law, there is no word for her rape, because legally, it is not rape. She is property, and property cannot be violated. Her body is an extension of her master's household, available at his command. And you, the wife, are forced to witness. Perhaps you sit by the fire, pretending not to hear the sounds from the far bench. Perhaps you lie in your alcove while the curtain shakes, the cries of a thrall muffled into silence. You cannot intervene. To protest would be to challenge your husband's rights, as though you questioned his claim to slaughter a sheep or break a chair. Even your sympathy is dangerous. So you learn to look away, to close your ears, to pretend the girl who brings your food is not also being broken nightly by the same man who placed the morning gift in your hand. This silent cruelty seeps into every corner of the hall. Thralls live in constant terror, and their fear is contagious. You see it in their eyes, in the way they flinch at footsteps, in the way they learn to move silently, invisibly. Their degradation becomes part of the air you breathe, the background hum of violence against which your own struggles seem almost privileged. And yet, their suffering is tied to yours. If a thrall bears your husband a child, that child may live in the hall, half-brother or half-sister to your own. It may grow up strong, perhaps even favored, perhaps even threatening the inheritance of your sons. Bloodlines blur, rivalries grow. The sagas record these tensions, children of thralls rising, legitimate heirs falling, the household fractured by invisible battle lines of blood and status. But the deepest truth is this: in the longhouse, no woman is free. The thrall is owned, her consent irrelevant. The wife is bound, her consent assumed. You may outrank the slave, but both of you live under the same shadow: the will of the man, the authority of the clan, the judgment of the hall. And for the men themselves, this brutality feeds into a culture obsessed with dominance. A man is measured by his ability to command, to penetrate, to possess. To fail at dominance, to be accused of weakness, is the greatest shame. The word ergi, the most devastating insult in the Norse tongue, meant unmanliness, effeminacy, even the passive role in sex. A man branded ergi was finished, cast out, often killed. So the longhouse becomes a crucible of power. Men assert dominance through violence and possession. Women survive by silence and endurance. Thralls endure unspeakable suffering in shadows everyone pretends not to see. And all of it, the laughter by the fire, the cries in the dark, the silent meals served by trembling hands, becomes part of the daily rhythm, the unspoken contract of survival. If life in the longhouse is hard for you, bound by contract and duty, it is immeasurably worse for those at the bottom. The thralls, the thralls. They are the enslaved, the human property taken in raids or born into bondage, and their suffering forms the silent foundation upon which your household rests. They cook the meals, mend the nets, haul the water, weave the cloth. They sleep on benches near the doors, where the cold seeps in first, or even in the byres among livestock. But their greatest burden is not the endless labour. It is the total absence of ownership over their own bodies. For the thrall woman, there is no protection, no pretense of rights. At any moment, your husband or his brothers, his father, or even a guest he wishes to honour may claim her. In the law, there is no word for her rape, because legally, it is not rape. She is property, and property cannot be violated. Her body is an extension of her master's household, available at his command. And you, the wife, are forced to witness. Perhaps you sit by the fire, pretending not to hear the sounds from the far bench. Perhaps you lie in your alcove while the curtain shakes, the cries of a thrall muffled into silence. You cannot intervene. To protest would be to challenge your husband's rights, as though you questioned his claim to slaughter a sheep or break a chair. Even your sympathy is dangerous, so you learn to look away, to close your ears, to pretend the girl who brings your food is not also being broken nightly by the same man who placed the morning gift in your hand. This silent cruelty seeps into every corner of the hall. Thralls live in constant terror, and their fear is contagious. You see it in their eyes, in the way they flinch at footsteps, in the way they learn to move silently, invisibly. Their degradation becomes part of the air you breathe, the background hum of violence against which your own struggles seem almost privileged. And yet, their suffering is tied to yours. If a thrall bears your husband a child, that child may live in the hall, half-brother or half-sister to your own. It may grow up strong, perhaps even favoured, perhaps even threatening the inheritance of your sons. Bloodlines blur, rivalries grow. The sagas record these tensions, children of thralls rising, legitimate heirs falling, the household fractured by invisible battle lines of blood and status. But the deepest truth is this: in the longhouse, no woman is free. The thrall is owned, her consent irrelevant. The wife is bound, her consent assumed. You may outrank the slave, but both of you live under the same shadow: the will of the man, the authority of the clan, the judgment of the hall. And for the men themselves, this brutality feeds into a culture obsessed with dominance. A man is measured by his ability to command, to penetrate, to possess. To fail at dominance, to be accused of weakness, is the greatest shame. The word. Years pass, and your body, once young and demanded, begins to bend beneath the weight of time. Your hair turns the colour of ash, your hands gnarled by weaving and grinding, your back stooped from hauling and childbearing. You have survived childbirth, famine, sickness, humiliation. You have lived longer than many women in this hall. But survival is not the same as safety. Your husband is gone, perhaps fallen in battle, perhaps taken by fever, perhaps rotting from within with some slow, unnameable disease. You buried him with his weapons, as custom demanded, but his protection died with him. The household keys you once held with trembling fingers have long since been passed to another. Your son's wife, young and sharp-eyed, who looks at you the way you once looked at your own mother-in-law. You are no longer the mistress of the hall. You are an extra mouth, a burden. Each bite of food you take is measured in silence. Are you still useful? Can you still mend nets, tell stories to children, spin yarn with shaking hands? Or are you just another shadow in the smoky corner, waiting for death? The sagas speak of men dreaming of Valhalla, of dying sword in hand and feasting with Odin forever. But you are a woman. Your battles were fought in the birthing bed, in the politics of the longhouse, in the silent wars of endurance. There is no Valhalla for you. Your afterlife lies in hell, the cold, shadowy realm, for those who die, a straw death, in bed rather than in battle. A dreary fate, for a life spent in toil. And when death comes, it is no noble affair. It is not a pyre on a ship set aflame, the kind sung of in poems. That is for kings, for warriors, whose names echo in sagas. You die in the same flea-ridden bed where you once gave birth, where you once endured the bed-warming ritual, where you once clutched your morning gift like a lifeline. Around you, the hall continues. Children laughing, men boasting, thralls moving silently about their chores. Your dying is public, like everything else in this life. There is no privacy, even in death. At last, your breath falters, and silence spreads briefly in your corner of the hall. Then life continues. Your body is washed one last time, clothed in what little finery you own. Perhaps the morning gift, the one possession that was truly yours, is placed in your hand. You are carried out of the longhouse, not on a ship of fire, but to a shallow grave dug into the cold earth. Stones are raised in a low mound, a marker that will weather and fade. Your place on the sleeping bench is quickly claimed. The young bride, your successor, takes the keys you once held. The same rituals, the same humiliations, the same relentless demands begin again for her. You watch from the shadows of memory, seeing your own life repeated like a cruel cycle written into the bones of this society. And then, slowly, even your memory fades. Your name is forgotten, swallowed by the sagas of warriors and kings. You become one of the countless silent women whose lives were lived in smoke and hardship, unrecorded, unnamed, but essential. Without you, there is no line, no heirs, no sagas. And yet, history will not remember you. This is the true Viking world, stripped of romance, a world where survival demanded sacrifice, where intimacy was transaction, where a woman's life was bound to the hearth, the womb, and the weight of unending judgment. We look back today with fascination, even admiration, at the boldness of the Vikings, their ships, their raids, their sagas. But behind those stories lies another truth. Countless women, living and dying in silence, enduring a life so harsh it is almost unimaginable to us now. Their resilience is staggering, their suffering immeasurable. And the greatest privilege we have, sitting in the quiet privacy of our own homes, is that we did not survive their world, because to survive it, we would have had to become something far harder, far colder than we are. Ergi. The most devastating insult in the Norse tongue meant unmanliness, effeminacy, even the passive role in sex. A man branded Ergi was finished, cast out, often killed. So the longhouse becomes a crucible of power. Men assert dominance through violence and possession. Women survive by silence and endurance. Thralls endure unspeakable suffering. In shadows, everyone pretends not to see. And all of it, the laughter by the fire, the cries in the dark, the silent meals served by trembling hands, becomes part of the daily rhythm, the unspoken contract of survival.